Hello everyone, in today's video we're going to be taking a look at flying the Beechcraft 18. Now this is a really cool airplane and I'm really glad that they released this one for this flight sim. It's one of those I'm like, another classic plane. We got the 247 now, I figured that'd be enough, but this is actually really cool and there's a lot of nice stuff about it. So let's go ahead and get started. So first things first, climbing inside this thing, you can see we've got a lot of mix of old and new. Looking at this fabric right here, my brain immediately goes, oh yes, I remember this. Look at the light switch on this thing. It's like kind of a thing, and you've got this old little handle here to open up the window. I mean, look at that. It's got a sideways window with a little lever that catches it. There's a lot of really cool things with this particular airplane, and I absolutely get a kick out of it as well. So unfortunately for us, this airplane has got a couple little quirks to it. Haha! If you haven't guessed yet, you're probably looking at those quirks right now. There's an enormous amount of instrumentation down here for engine control. This is not for the faint of heart, in my opinion, as far as aircraft goes. Obviously, it's not a Lockheed Constellation or DC-6, but there's a lot of handles down here, and you have to kind of be mindful of which one that you're actually going to be grabbing and what you're going to be doing to make this thing work. So let's go ahead and do it. I managed to track down a checklist. This was actually really difficult to find a checklist for. But I was able to poke around, I grabbed it, and I hooked it up here. Like I said, made it pretty straightforward. I'll provide a link to this for anybody who'd like to steal this. Like I said, I stole this after poking around on Google. And we're just going to go follow this checklist kind of coming down today and do the best we can. Now, one other thing I want to say, too, before I get too carried away here, is the fact that this aircraft itself has some bugs in it. Now, all these bugs have been very well documented already. So you're probably going to see some things not work, especially right here, and especially in some other options as well, like getting it started. So let's go ahead and do this. So first things first, we're going to make sure everything's ready to rock here. Cabin doors should be closed. I'm just going to close up the window. Cabin doors are closed. Look how nice it looks in the back. I love that. We're going to make sure our controls are free and clear. Give everybody a quick little wiggle here. Looks pretty good. We're going to make sure our landing gear switch is in the down position. Not that position, that position. What a dangerous switch. That thing is so easy to hit with your right leg. That's so sketchy. We're going to set the parking brake, so we're just going to go pull that so it's ready to go. We're going to make sure our battery and generator switches are in the on position. So these are our switches. One thing I love is if you can shut everybody off at once. So in an emergency, you go slap, and shut everything off that you don't need, kind of a thing, which makes it really easy. The gear safe light should be on. So in this particular case, we're going to check that. Sweet. All right, we're going to make sure our generator safe light, we should be having a warning on that one as well. Good to go. Again, this is a different model than the one that they have, but that's all right. Let's see, fuel quantity, we're going to check it. So what we're going to do is we're going to come here and take a look, see if we need to refuel. Yeah, we definitely need to refuel here. So let's go up here. And we're now seeing refuel. You can check all the individual fuel tanks. I love this thing. It's just it's so old school. We're just going to confirm that that's all set. We got plenty of gas. I'll leave it on the left tank here. We're going to make sure cross feed is set off. We have none of that engaged, so I'm not going to worry about that at all. Coming down here, we have our fuel selector. We're going to make sure our fuel selectors are on main. Both of these are on the main switch, so we're good to go. Let's see, anti-ice flow, we're not checking on that. Trim, we're going to set for takeoff. The trim on this thing is picky. The best way to describe it is it's extra demanding. It's not one of those trims where it's like, oh, I can just pull through it. You won't be able to pull through it. So what I do is I give it a couple taps of elevator up trim, even though, like I said, we have no direct indicator on that. We're going to set our flaps to the neutral position. That's going to be the switcher. Whoa! I'm sorry, by the way. I completely misspoke. Our trim elevator tab is right here. So you can see by pressing and holding it, you can get yourself quite a bit of trim here. I like to kind of pop it between 1 and 0. I'm sorry. I got two airplanes confused. My bad. All right, so we're going to set our flap set switch in the neutral position. Just put it all the way up. We're going to go ahead and set our throttles to be 1/8 of an inch open. So I'm just going to push it up a little bit. Like a little bit helps a lot on this particular one. Mixtures, we're going to set to rich. We have two handles for that. We're going to throw that handle forward. We're going to throw that handle over there forward as well. We're going to make sure our props are in the high position. That's these two handles here. Oh my gosh, these knobs. That's so dangerous. All right, we're going to set our manifold heat to cold. So that's these two switches. I'm sorry, not these two switches. Our manifold heat. We have an oil shutter. There's our manifold. Yeah. So we lift this to get into the cold position. So we want to make sure that's all set. So I'm going to push this up and make sure that's off. If you pull it back, that's going to turn it on. All right, let's see here. We have manifold heat. We have oil shutters are going to be set to the hot position. These are our two oil shutters right here. We're going to leave these both forward. Now coming down here, the oil shutoff valves, we want to make sure they're activated. If you pull it, you want to be very careful here. You have an oil bypass option if you need it. You definitely don't want to bypass this. You also have these shut-off options for disabling that as well. We don't want any of those to be set. That could be pretty bad. We want our circuit breakers checked. We've got plenty of them. They look like they're in pretty good shape right now. Electrical switches are off. Alternate static source, I'm not going to even bother with that. Oil bypass valve skipping, warning lights checked. We should have a fuel warning light right here, which seems to work okay. We can go ahead and tap that light if we want to check that. We can check our two landing gear lights, which seem to be working correctly as well. Good to go. Okay, starting this thing is kind of a pain. So let's do it. So what you normally do is, according to the instructions here, we come over here and we put the fuel pump on, which is going to be this switch right here. Having played with this a few different ways, and again, we don't have a lot of good documentation from Carnado on this, so we're kind of working with what we have kind of a thing. I've discovered that you have to be kind of mindful of some of the different things, and you'll see what I mean. You have to play with it. All right, my beacon light is on because we're going to need that one. So I'm actually going to turn on my magnetos first here. We have several sets. We're just going to click them all on just like that. There's my master switch if I need it. We can prime if we need to. Priming this thing is kind of a pain in the butt. The way we prime it is you're going to grab the top half of the switch, set it to the side you want, and then you click the bottom half of the switch to get it to go. All right, we'll give it a couple whacks. It's plenty hot outside, so I'm not worried about that. So right engine first. So I'm going to set right engine. So what you're going to do is, as always, you look out the window, you yell clear prop and all that other good kind of stuff like that. So what you're going to do is, normally what you would do is you engage the starter for 2 revolutions, which isn't going to do anything, unfortunately. Then you do it. But the way they want you to do is to boost, start. And just like that, we have a rumbling engine. Now, you probably noticed that very, very high-pitched sound that's going on right now. That is something I've encountered many times with this aircraft. It's just another one of those fun things that make it a little more exciting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and engage the starter on the other engine. Like I said, this thing can be a little bit tricky. Boost, start, and there we go. So you notice that you can still hear that fuel pump sound. That is just one of those weird, quirky things about this plane. But once we have both of those engines started, I feel like I'm yelling. I'm going to go turn it down. There you go. That way you don't have to listen to it. So there's nothing I have been able to discover that disables that sound. You know, you can come and push this on and off. You can shut the master switch off. I think it comes right back on. Off. Close, like I said. And it fires right back up again. Ugh. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a quick little restart here and pick up from where we left off. All right, it's good to go. I just need to slap a couple more gallons in here and be good to go again. All right, cool. So this is where we left off. Like I said, that's just a weird bug. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. It's just kind of there. If you don't push that button, it doesn't work. So next thing what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and flip on our avionics, which is above our head. Go click. If you need any lights, all the lights are available above your head that you can go ahead and tap like that. Apparently, we're at a pretty good altitude here. I'm going to adjust that real fast. We're going to go ahead and change our CDI mode to GPS. If you intend to use the automatic pilot, this is a great time to go ahead and set up what mode you want to use on the automatic pilot. We have Omni, Nav, HIDIG, Loc, and Loc Rev. This is an old school switch. Omni seems to be kind of the easy way to use it. Theoretically, Nav would be the switch to use here, but again, I find that Omni is just a little more reliable. Like I said, this whole autopilot is going to be a little wonky. If you have an external autopilot for your controller setup, I suggest using that and not these switches. It's just going to work a little bit better for you. So let's go ahead and pop on the altimeter. What's that? That one's up here. Let's pop on the transponder, so that's good to go. Coming down here, one last check of all my switches. This does not need to be in that position. I'll put that there. Just checking. We want to make sure our tail wheel is unlocked. We're going to need that for this. And of course, when we're on the ground, we want to make sure our cowl flaps are going to be in up position. We're going to leave our oil shutter alone. Our oil shutter, by the way, is basically going to let some hot air in. You can see right now, everything's a pretty good temperature as far as oil goes. And you can also see my cylinders are still warming up. So I'm not really worried about that. Notice also I'm sitting here at about 1,000 RPM. So let's go ahead and get ourselves over the runway here. We don't have a very, very long journey. You can see the runway is literally right over there. So as always, we're dealing with a tail dragger here. So when you're taxiing on the ground, believe it or not, you have a steerable tail wheel, which makes it much easier. So I'm going to release the parking brake, and I'm just going to go ahead and kick the left rudder over here. And this thing's going to get going. Don't let it go too fast. Just because you are a heavy tail dragger does not change the fact you're still a tail dragger. You got to be really careful, cautious with this one. Make sure you set your controls in the wind. Make sure you have everything else set. One thing I recommend is if you don't mind a little lack of immersion here, feel free to use the third-person view. Otherwise, I'd be doing S-turns on the ground and just be very, very gentle with this thing. Now, once it gets going, the tail end tends to lift up, and that's going to make you very, very miserable in a hurry. Give a couple taps of the brake. Make sure everything's looking pretty good here. Like I said, this is quite the brumbly airplane, and it is absolutely excellent in so many different ways, except for the little stuff, as you probably observe. Go ahead and kick that nose over here. We're going to kind of head this way. Oh, boy. Give us some good old-fashioned. I feel like a P-47 here. You got to do the big old S-turns on the ground. There we go. Looks pretty good. We'll do a midfield takeoff here. Well, it's not really midfield takeoff. It's a 1/3 field takeoff, I guess is what I'm going to call it. I'm going to hold the brakes just a little bit, and we're just going to kind of dance right onto the runway here. Easy on the brakes. There we go. I guess I don't want to go too fast. Tail draggers are weird. And right there. Okay, so now there's two parts to the run-up in this particular aircraft. The first part of the run-up, what we're going to do is we're going to check the props. The second part of the run-up, we're going to be checking to make sure that the magnetos work properly, which is pretty easy to do. So to check the props, it's pretty easy. What we're going to do is we're going to pop this up to about 1500 RPM. I expect the whole aircraft to be doing like one of these right now, but it's just not happening. It should be going like this and sort of dancing as the wind hits the tail there. But that's okay, I'm not worried about it too much. All right, it's 1500 RPM. So now what we're going to do is we're going to exercise the props. We just pull the prop handle down. We want to see that it goes, push it back forward, and it should come back up nicely. Nice. So now what we're going to do is we're going to push it up to 1800 RPM. And we're going to go check the magnetos. It takes quite a bit of effort here in order to get these engines up to 1800. You'll know what I mean when you test it. Make sure your cowl flaps are open for this step, by the way. There's 1800. So watch how sweet this is. You click this one off. See the RPMs dropped. Turn it back on. Click this one off. Look at that. And this would also be a good time to check your carburetor heat. We're good to go. I'm going to go ahead and pull this back. Also make sure everything is in the green here. You can see our oil temperature is just a little high. Nothing terrible, though. You can also see our cylinders are nice and warm, and we have the cowl flaps open. It's an air-cooled engine, so we got to get this thing rolling. All right, let's go. We're ready to go, so we're just going to do a before takeoff checklist here. Controls are free, mixture's rich, propeller RPM, oil shutters are open. We have manifold cold, flaps up, fuel selector set, oil bypass closed. Trim is set. Like I said, you want to give it a couple whacks of trim to get this one up. Instruments check. Navigations, you want to make sure that's all set, ready to rock. Let's go ahead and line ourselves up with a runway here. A little bit more. I know some of you were saying, did you see that windsock? It was pointing. Actually, there's no wind. Don't worry about it. And we'll go ahead and let the thing settle a little bit here. Okay, so takeoff. I highly recommend using the tail wheel lock. It is your best friend. It makes it a lot easier. Check to make sure your cowl flaps are in the open position. Make sure whatever you're doing with your oil coolers is set correctly. Like I said, we're at perfect temperature right now, so we don't have to worry about that too much. Takeoff on this thing is very straightforward. We're just going to accelerate a slight tail down. When we get up to altitude, we're going to go ahead and make sure we set our power correctly. We're looking for 36.5 as our absolute maximum power here. 36.5 is that little red line that you see right here, and 2300 RPM is typically what it's going to be. Once we do get going a little bit higher, we're going to reduce everything. Like I said, we'll keep it simple for now. All right, let's go. So we'll slightly tail back. Remember, you're dealing with a twin here, so you want to give it a little bit of time for the two engines to meet each other. In the real world, they never meet each other as smoothly as they do in a simulator. And here we go. Now what's going to happen is when the tail comes off the ground, the entire plane is going to jump to the right. And then what you have to do is you just have to gently connect it. We're just going to fly the plane low. And we're just going to gently pull back. We're just going to come off the runway. Just like that. I'm going to raise up the gear. Now remember, if you did not set your trim right, you're going to have a real fun time getting this thing to get up here. And we're going to go set up to about a 7-degree climb, cruising pretty nicely here. And now we're going to get ready to set our climb power. So climb power is 32 and 2150. So what I'm going to do is get a little tiny bit of altitude. 120 is about our climb speed here. It seems to work pretty well from what I've looked up. And again, all the research is different depending on what generation of the plane you're dealing with here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and always do power before pitch. So we're going to go ahead and reduce our power. And we're going to come all the way down to 32 inches, which is right where I'm at now. And we're going to go ahead and pull our pitch control back until we get to 2,150 RPM. There's 2,150 RPM. Oh, a little bit back. And that will be our climb power, just like that. Climb speed on this one is 120 or 140. That's miles an hour. What I found is about 120 knots. Seems to work okay. You don't need to do anything too excessive from that regard. And then we just continue our little climb upwards. So you can see I've got about 120 knots in the airspeed indicator. You can see that we're climbing pretty comfortably here. Nothing's getting too hot. I'm looking at my engine temperatures. They're good. Oil temperatures are good. Actually, the oil temperature is a little on the low side. Nothing bad, but nothing we can't adjust real quick. Go ahead and slap that closed real fast. Of course, I can never reach the other switch from my seat. Hop over here real quick. Go ahead and close that one as well. Sweet. All right, good to go. I'm going to go ahead and take a nice gentle turn to the left here. Crouch down in my seat because one of the reasons we came out here, of course, today was to take a look at something which is very distinctive. Some of you probably noticed it when I was coming by here, but I'll go ahead and swing around so everybody can take a good look at it anyway, because why not? Let's see here. Just swing just a little bit this way, and there it is, the Taj Mahal, because why not, right? Look at that, it's so cool. All right, so other things we need to think about. Let's say we go ahead and get to our cruise altitude here. I'm going to pop up to about 2,000 feet, and then we'll go ahead and trim everything out for our cruise. Do a little bit of a slip here so we can just appreciate the ridiculousness that is the scale of that particular location. All right, nose comes up a little bit. Again, you're going to be very aggressive with the pitch trim on this thing. It suffers from Microsoft trim, which means everything is much faster than it actually needs to be. But again, that's part of the fun. All right, so let's go ahead and level off right here at 2,000 feet here. Give myself just a tiny bit of trim. Again, it's going to want to climb on you. You'll see exactly what I mean. So now we're going to go ahead and set our thing up for cruise. Again, we can cruise pretty efficiently in this one at the speed if we had to. This is a pretty fast cruise. The book says that we should be using 28 and 2,000. I'm going to go ahead and reduce power first. That's 29, that's 28. And we're going to go ahead and pull the RPM lever back just a smidge. It's not going to take much to get you down to 2,000 RPM here. 2,000 RPM is right about there. It's about 2,028. So that will be a nice smooth cruise for us. Give myself a couple more whacks of the trim there. I'm just going to stabilize everything just a little bit for us. There we go. And now let's take a look at the automatic pilot. So the autopilot on this thing is a little tricky. You'll see exactly what I mean. By the way, good time to close up your cowl flaps because of the fact that we are cruising and we're going pretty quick here. So why is the autopilot tricky? Well, because you have different modes. I'm actually going to freeze this for just a second here. There we go. So the way this normally would work is you have your roll, your heading, your altitude, and your pitch hold. What you would do is you'd pitch to a certain angle, push pitch, and then the aircraft would activate just the pitch autopilot. So if I wanted to stick the nose up and press the pitch control, it would go ahead and move the nose up and down. Your altitude is just altitude hold. As soon as you mangle that button, the aircraft will try to lock onto the current altitude that you're at and stay there. This works pretty well. Heading is a little tricky. Heading actually would use this switch to determine what mode it's on. For example, if I was pointing towards heading hold mode, I could use the heading bug to select the heading I want, press heading, and then it would lock onto that heading. And then last but not least, you have roll, which would hold whatever roll that you have. So watch this in action. So I'm going to go ahead and unpause real quickly. I'm going to press the altitude hold. So as soon as I press that, theoretically it should kick in and lock up our altitude here. I'm also going to activate it. Again, pitch is for up and down, altitude is for left and right. Now watch this. I'm going to activate the pitch mode, and I'm going to go ahead and order up a little bit of pitch up. Do you notice that the aircraft is not pitching up? The reason it does not pitch up is because roll has to be enabled in order for the autopilot to work. This is actually like autopilot on. So if I click on roll, all of a sudden the aircraft is now going to kick into action and it's going to start doing things for us. So in this case, I'm going to come down a little bit, altitude hold, and it will actually level off at this altitude for me eventually. Now that we have control, again, you can see why this one's a little bit crazy. We now have the ability to fly the plane with the roll angle hold. So for example, if I click on 3 clicks here, do you notice how the entire aircraft turned right even though I pointed to the left? I know what you're thinking. You're saying, oh, somebody got a negative where they should have gotten a positive. I agree completely. But believe it or not, we can now fly this aircraft with this roll hold. So in this case, I've got this thing banked at this angle. If I want to cancel a little bit of the bank, I can bring it this way. I can even come this way. And that will put us in a very, very gentle bank here, which is great. Now you're saying, well, what if you order a right turn? Does that make you go left? Actually, it doesn't. So if you jam this thing to right, watch this. It'll pause. And then it will initialize its right turns. Like I said, the autopilot on this thing is just, whoa, it's a little sensitive. By the way, when you set this to the middle position, it will immediately level the wings like instantaneously, which is nice, but not necessarily what you want. So go ahead and hold this in. So now you're sitting there going, okay, so that means you have to have roll on in order to safely fly this thing with the autopilot. Yeah, you do. And it actually gets a little more exciting than that. So now let's go ahead and finish up my turn here. I'm actually going to zoom back out because I want to head back from which we came. I'll zoom out just a little bit. Let's say we want to go ahead and fly somewhere. We want to use the navigational hold, whether it's a VOR or we want to fly by heading. So what we can do now is we can go ahead and grab my heading bug. By the way, this is the world's slowest heading bug. You'll know exactly what I mean when you try it yourself. I'm going to spin this thing all the way around. Looks like we're going to need a heading of, actually, there's my mistake here. We need to go mostly west here, and I turned it the wrong way. It's okay. It's a newbie mistake. I'm used to track up. That's map up, which is a little crazy. That's okay, though. Go ahead and I'll level it off. Watch this. Snap, and the whole thing is just going to go boing and go into that particular position. So go ahead and I'll line us all up here. Notice, by the way, it held the altitude when I clicked the switch. It doesn't lock on to like the nearest 100. So let's say I want to come slightly to the left here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick the heading mode I want, which is heading, and then I'm going to click on the heading switch. Now that I pressed the heading switch, do you notice that the aircraft turned to the right? And now moments later, the aircraft will start swinging to the left and actually aligning itself with the actual heading bug itself. Now, the weird thing is somebody's going to come out and say, oh, by the way, the real Beechcraft did the same thing. In which case, wow, they should mark that inop and not allow people to use it because that will kill somebody. But you can see that now if I adjust my heading, the whole aircraft will now respond to that heading bug. Now, it's a little different if we want to use this for navigation purposes. What we'd have to do is we'd have to pick our navigational point, which on VIAG looks pretty good here. Direct to, boop. We'll come down here and press enter. That's fine, works for me. Come down here, we'll press activate. Activate. You can see now that I've got it selected. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this to nav, flip on my heading hold again, and now what the aircraft is going to attempt to do is it's going to attempt to navigate to that particular point. If you notice it does not catch right away, what I found that works really well is switching it to Omni and then clicking the heading hold again. And then what it will do is it'll eventually kind of grasp back onto it. Keep in mind, we're at a bit of an angle to that actual position we need to be traveling to, so we might not actually have captured that particular position. So what we could do, of course, here is we could actually set our heading to be on an intercept course, switch this over to heading hold, click, and now what it will do is it'll bring us on the intercept course. Then we can select Omni mode, and then it will lock on. Don't forget, by the way, that when you are doing this, you want to make sure that whatever you have over on this display is set correctly. So obviously this is a GPS hold mode, so that's what we wanted it to be. If we didn't want it to be on that mode, we'd have to be a little more aggressive with it. So we'll go say hi to the Taj Mahal one more time as we're kind of going by here. Zoom in just a little bit. Like I said, we are fast, but we're not ripping fast here. A little more. I'm going to shut off heading hold. Notice the roll angle thing that snaps. Set that to Omni. I'm going to click on the heading mode. And what's going to happen now is it's going to attempt to latch onto that course. Like I said, this is a thing where you have to click it on, click it off, click it on, click it off. Many, many times in order to get this thing to behave. It's just kind of the nature. If you have an external panel or use something like Air Manager and you have like a little GPS that you can like push the buttons on, it works much better and everything is a much smoother here. So we're just about locked on. This thing should be snapping and grabbing onto it. Let's do it. Come on. Come on. Yeah, exactly what I expected. And again, this is a consistent problem for this one. If I actually were to back up just a teeny tiny bit, now flip this over to nav mode, cycle this a couple times. Hey, now it's working just fine. Also notice my sound is cut out. Like I said, there's a couple of things that you're going to have to battle with this aircraft. But once you kind of get the hang of it and you all get comfortable with kind of fitzing with the switches, you'll find that everything works really, really well for you in that regard. So what we're going to do now is we're going to set this thing up for landing, and we'll walk you through the landing procedure, which is really, really straightforward. I was actually really, really impressed with this aircraft as far as landing performance goes. I found that I didn't have to do anything weird with the controls in order to fly it. Even though we are a tailwheel airplane, I find it to be very, very stable on any sort of approach that we're going to be using for this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kill the automatic pilot. I'm going to go ahead and start swinging us back over to the right here, and we'll start bringing ourselves back down to the ground. All right, got to finish that turn up. Looks pretty good, and there is our airport. All right, so landing this thing it's not bad. It's just different. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by increasing my RPM. And I'm going to back down my power. According to the book here, we're really not supposed to be going too low on our power here. Usually they say about 2,600 RPM is kind of the upper limit that we want to do. But that's perfectly fine. I'm not worried about it too much. It's a flight sim, so I'm not going to panic. And there's our lovely runway down there on the ground. One thing you want to watch out for on any descent is making sure everything is the correct temperature. So taking a look real quickly. Good. Yes, I'm not going to change anything. So there is our lovely airport over there on our left. We're in a bit of a base turn here. I'm going to pull the nose up just a little bit. You're going to get this angry warning. I'm going to go ahead and pop the switch down, and we're going to come swing over to the left here. Now, when it comes to landings with this aircraft, I find it to be a much easier aircraft to land if you do a wheel landing. Again, we're dealing with a tailwheel airplane here, so it's going to be a little different. So we are very high, but that's perfectly fine. Like I said, I'm just going to enter us into a slip. So as far as final speed for approach goes, I found that 80 seems to be kind of the sweet spot as far as not too fast, not too slow. The book suggests there's 1.2 VSO. So if we're looking in miles an hour there, that would be something like about about 80 miles per hour. But like I said, we're dealing in knots, so 80 knots seems to feel right from what I've been able to experiment with before. All right, so now we got our speed. We're going to be doing a wheel landing here. The trick to wheel landings, of course I'm going to mess it up this time, is you want a formation fly with the ground all the way down to the ground. Again, we want to get our speed up to about 80. Double check to make sure everything's ready. So what you're going to do is you're basically going to fly right above the ground. We got a little bit of a wind here, nothing too bad. And we're just going to keep away with the ground. Again, back the throttle back just a little bit. and then you're going to touch the wheels first. Now, when you brake with two-wheel landings here, when that tail wheel catches, you're going to feel a tremendous boing, and it's going to snap away from you. So you got to kind of catch it without jamming on the brakes. There we go. Nose back. And we're just going to navigate to keep safe again. No hard braking here. And we are on the ground. Whoa! It's always super entertaining. Whoa! Easy on the brakes. So you can see this is a really neat plane. It has a couple different issues with it that you have to kind of work around. Those are the things I found that work. Eventually they'll release a patch, so it'll probably clean a bunch of this up. But other than that, enjoy.